Hello, everyone. Welcome to topic 12. We'll talk a little bit about smoking today. It's about 19 slides, but it'll probably go pretty quick. Most of the information is right there on the slides, kind of lots of facts and statistics for you on this one. When we go through it real quick, I'll point out some of the highlights of it. That doesn't mean that's the only thing you need to know. It just kind of I just want to make sure that you hit the high points or some of the important things to get you to start thinking about the problem with smoking. So here we go. So some quick statistics. Almost 500,000 Americans will die each year from some sort of tobacco related. And that's about 10 million that are just going to suffer from diseases. That doesn't mean they're going to die. So that's a lot of people either dying with disease. Now those diseases will cost, right, in healthcare. So, which is a terrible thing. And you might think, well, that's really too bad for that person who has, that issue. But you'll end up paying for it, and I'll end up paying for it, and our society ends up paying for it. Many of these people who are having these issues won't be working, so the type of insurance that they'll be on and the medical care that they'll get will be paid for by you and me and our taxes. So not to say that we shouldn't treat people, but just understand that there's some ramifications to people who smoke on society as a whole. So not only is it really bad for them, but probably not so good for us as non-smokers. 1 in every 5 deaths is going to be smoking related. And the saddest one is right down there. The last point there is almost 2,500 children under the age of 18 are going to try their first cigarette. So we're going to look at a little bit more of those statistics too about young smokers and how they're being sought out by and targeted by the tobacco industry, and not just here in the United States, but everywhere in the world, and most of the time in other places in the world because they don't have the same regulations. So about 90% of all adult smokers begin before the age of 18. The tobacco industry knows this, so they're going to put money into that. They're going to make smoking available and everywhere and look cool and things like that. So there is a high cost. If you are a tobacco user, you can look at these numbers here. It's going to cost you about $56,000 a year over the next 51 years, because that's usually the average smoking duration for people. And that's about $2 million. So that's a lot of money. Now, granted, you can try to save that if you're a non-smoker, and it doesn't make you a millionaire. But by smoking, it's certainly going to cut into your savings. So there's lots of different ways that smoking is available. Cigarettes, obviously, is the most popular. Cigars, pipes, biddies are a picture of it right down at the bottom part of that first slide. They're just rolled cigarettes. Chewing tobacco, things like that. You guys know most of these. What I want to point out on this slide is that the effect of tobacco, the effect that people look for from the tobacco is the nicotine. And a lot of times we think that it's the smoke itself that causes all the harm and nicotine isn't that big of a deal. Well, I think we missed the point when we talk about that. Nicotine is bound typically to hydrogen cyanide, and that cyanide is a very dangerous poison, and so is the nicotine for that matter. And those are the things that impair the cilia in our lungs and cause us to have poor lung function. So if we have poor lung function, not only do we damage the lungs, but we don't get a lot of oxygen into our system. That then doesn't allow for good cellular life. And so the cells in our body that our oxygen goes to, which is all of them, they start to get ill as well. And so systemically, we'll become ill, like our circulatory system or our respiratory system or our digestive system, whatever's not getting those good nutrients and the oxygen will begin to form disease. And that's usually where those cancers form and the other things that happen when we smoke. And it's not just the smoke. It's the nicotine that does it as well. So here's some of the effects of nicotine. It does affect the central nervous system. That's CNS right there. And you can see a whole list of them over here and the side effects. So if any of those side effects look a little bit frightening to you, you're right. They are frightening. remember, nicotine comes in a lot of different forms now. It's not just cigar smoke or cigarette smoke or pipe smoke or chewing tobacco. Nicotine is being put into other products as well, and that's the kind of thing that I think we need to educate people more on, is that it's the effect of the nicotine that makes smoking really dangerous, not just the smoke. So here's a video on smoking and vaping. It'll be available to you. Just look for the link in the additional material. So I want you to watch this, smoking versus vaping. Here's some of the hazards of the smoking, and remember, it's not just the smoke and all the chemicals you get from smoking a plant. It can also be and is the nicotine as well. So 80 to 90% of lung cancer deaths for men and women caused by smoking, and that's really just about. It really depends on how much you smoke. Most people are, smoking a pack a day or so, and how long you've been smoking, how deeply you inhale, all kinds of things like that. Just know that there's no gauge on that. There's no gauge that says your body tells you, hey, you just breathed in 90% or whatever. You don't know how much you're breathing in, and you don't so you're taking your chances. Other forms of tobacco will cause other problems as well. This gentleman here in this picture actually visited Safford and spoke at Safford High School. He lost his jawbone because of cancer, and so he doesn't have a jawbone. So his ability to eat has been compromised. So, here's some of the respiratory issues: chronic bronchitis, emphysema. My grandfather on my dad's side died of emphysema, and I was there the night before he passed away. And if you take a stirring straw, like you would stir coffee or mix, in a cup, just those little red stirring straws, and they're very, very small. That's about what he was breathing through. That was how much oxygen, or that's how much lung capacity he had. He was barely sipping in air the last few weeks. And so what a horrible way to go. So emphysema is a really nasty one. These pictures here are from tobacco use. Both of them had throat or lip cancer, and so they do surgery for that. They have to cut you open and take out all the cancers. Smokers are 2 times more likely than non-smokers to have a stroke as well, and that's not pictured here. And so it's really important. And remember, it's not just the smoke. It's not just all the chemicals you get from the plant. It's the nicotine that'll destroy the cells as well. The good news is your risk will go down about 50% after about a year of quitting. So your lifespan kind of goes back to normal as well. So it's important, if you are using tobacco or you're using nicotine in any of its form, vaping, however you're using it, that you're aware of the consequences, and that know that if you quit, then you're going to be back to normal pretty quickly, relatively. So when they look at smokers, they looked at a study did on male smokers or men. They were twice as likely as non-smokers to experience impotence. Obviously, that's a concern that happens for men. In other words, they can't have sex, they can't get an erection. So twice as likely to be impotent. It has to do with oxygen needs and things like that as well, blood flow, things like that. So gum disease was 3 times more likely in non-smokers or smokers than non-smokers. And the medication use, and medications are less likely to be effective. So all kinds of problems occur with smoking. So if you do get sick and the doctor gives you medication and you're still smoking, then the medication isn't going to be as effective. Matter of fact, our orthopedic surgeon in town makes everybody quit smoking while they're in recovery. And as working in a physical therapy office, we would ask them every time they come in, how's that smoking going, and making sure that they're not smoking, because it just impedes their healing process. The pain medication doesn't work as well, the antibiotics don't work as well, and they don't heal as quickly. So smokers have a tougher time healing. There's this term called environmental tobacco smoke, ETS, and it used to be called secondhand smoke. You can do it mainstream, and that's where you smoke, and then side stream is where is secondhand. secondhand smoke. So the side stream or secondhand smoke isn't necessarily someone blowing smoke out of their mouth, because that's been filtered already through the cigarette filter, through their lungs, filtered it, and then the smoke comes out of their mouth. What the big concern is the burning end of the cigarette. So the burning end of the cigarette filter is non-filtered. It's in the air, and you're breathing that in as a non-smoker, and it's very, very, very dangerous. So here's some of the statistics on that, especially with kids. You're looking at 7,000 different types of chemicals in the air. The tar alone has twice as much tar in the air from not being filtered. So this is really, really unhealthy, especially for kids. So obviously, it's been linked to lung cancer, pneumonia, bronchitis. Children who are side smoking or secondhand smoke are at a huge risk for upper respiratory illness. They're more likely to have colds and asthma and things like that. So because of that, they end up missing more school. So especially while they're young. So the early part of their elementary, which impedes their education, and that's a whole nother topic. And anyway, this is really, really bad stuff. So secondhand smoke is a very dangerous thing. So there's been lots of different anti-smoking groups that have come out. The government's kind of gotten on board. There's no more advertising on TV. There was a huge lawsuit against the tobacco company because of some studies that came out. But that was started in 1998 is when they settled that, and it goes for 25 years. So you do the math. What year is it now, and how many more years do we have left of that suit where the tobacco industry has to pay out that money? And it's not far away that ends. So the question you should be asking yourself is, what will the tobacco industry do next? And all of those government agencies that are depending on this money that they've been getting the last 20 or so years, where are they going to get that funding? So are they going to sue somebody else? Who's next? They're used to the money, so where's it going to come from? So those are a couple of questions that you can kind of ask yourself with this big tobacco money drying up in the next couple of years. And it'll be interesting to see who's next. So quitting is really, really hard. My dad was a smoker since he was about 9 years old and he smoked until his 40s, and he really had a hard time quitting. He finally just quit cold turkey, which we'll talk about in a second. But how difficult is it? About 33% or a third of all smokers try to quit every year, and about 90% of them fail. It's not because they're so used to the smoke. It's the nicotine and what that's doing to them. So be careful. Remember, it's the nicotine. So we're not talking about just cigarette smoking. People who vape, and that's a higher concentration of nicotine in the vape, and not regulated very well. So you're not sure how much you're getting. So be careful. It's the nicotine. I keep saying that, but so there's been lots of products to kind of help with this. I've known people who have tried these. I met somebody in the hospital who chewed a whole box of the Nicorette gum, and it nearly killed him. So don't do that. And patches, all kinds of stuff. People will smoke a half a cigarette and then wean themselves down, and so there's all kinds of ways people try it. My dad went cold turkey. It seemed to work for him. So here's the cold turkey part. You have to do some self-control strategies. You got to get rid of all your cigarettes. You can't be around other people who smoke, and so it's a difficult thing. So that's why so many people fail when they try. So some of the benefits, right away, you're going to start to clear up your lungs within the first 8 hours. You're going to get oxygen levels kind of back to normal. Your lung capacity may not be there, but just the opportunity to breathe in clean air is going to help a lot. After about a month, the mucus that has been collecting in your lungs will start to clear up, and you'll get that nasty hacking smoker's cough, but it doesn't last a whole long time compared to what it would be. So about a month. And then after about 10 years, you're back to normal lifespan. Your risk of cancers go way down. So once you quit smoking, you can bounce back really good. Okay. So make sure that you do the assignments and you get on the chat and you get on the discussion board and enjoy this topic. And if you're smoking, then quit. All right, guys.